You know, every single organization, from your local university to a massive global company, is constantly facing hidden dangers. We're talking threats from the inside and threats from the outside. So how do they defend themselves? Well, they build a fortress, a system of internal controls. And in this explainer, we're going to grab the keys and unlock the blueprint for that fortress.
So, here's our game plan. First, we're going to explore this world of risk that companies are up against. Then, we'll check out the shield they use to protect themselves. After that, we'll do a deep dive into the blueprint itself, the COSO framework. Then, see how everyone has to play a part, and we'll wrap it all up with the auditor's final, crucial verdict.
All right, let's jump right in, because to really get the solution, you've got to appreciate the problem first. And the problem is, every single organization is operating in a world just filled with risk.
So just stop and think for a second. When you hear the words business risk, what pops into your head? What do you think are the biggest threats a company really faces day to day?
Well, the truth is, they can come from absolutely anywhere. And what's so wild about these examples is just how different they are. You've got a hacker who could totally derail a student's future, an unethical CEO whose actions could tank the entire company's stock, a huge geopolitical event that shuts down factories overnight, and then something as simple as an employee quietly bleeding the company dry, one fake invoice at a time. I mean, the risks can be criminal, they can be economic, internal, external, or sometimes just plain bad luck.
So how in the world does a company decide what to even worry about? They can't stop everything, right? This table gives us a great peek into their thinking. They have to quantify the risk. So a minor system hack, it's called an annoyance here, and it's got a 90% chance of happening. Annoying for sure, but you can live with it. But what if someone actually alters your data? That might only be a tiny 2% chance, but the consequences, a PR nightmare, customers running for the hills, are so catastrophic, that's where you spend the big bucks, building a rock-solid defense. It's all just one big calculated trade-off.
Okay, so now that we've seen all the dangers lurking out there, let's look at the defense system. In our second section, we're going to talk about the shield of control.
Here it is, the official definition from the industry gold standard, the COSO framework. And there are 3 words here that are absolutely critical. First, it's a process, which means it's an ongoing thing, not a one-and-done fix. Second, it's affected by people. This is a human system, not just some fancy software. And third, and this is maybe the most important part, it provides reasonable assurance. So the key takeaway is that it's not an ironclad guarantee of success. It's a system to dramatically improve the odds.
So what are all these controls trying to do? Well, their goals fall into 3 big buckets, and there's a really easy way to remember them. ORC. O is for operations, basically making sure the business runs smoothly and protecting its stuff. R is for reporting, making sure the financial numbers are trustworthy, so investors and managers can rely on them. And C is for compliance, which is just, following the law.
Okay, so we know what internal control is and why it's so important, but how do you actually build it? Well, that brings us to the main event, the industry standard blueprint, the COSO framework.
And this is it, the famous COSO cube. Now, I know it looks a little intimidating, but it's actually a brilliant way to see how all the pieces fit together. Think of it like this. On the top, you've got those 3 goals we just talked about, our ORC, operations, reporting, and compliance. On the side there, you have the company's structure, from the whole entity down to a single department. And right on the front, the part we're about to dive into, are the 5 essential components that make the whole thing go. See, it's all connected. And to remember those 5 components on the front, we've got another fantastic, if a little jumbled, mnemonic, CRIME. It stands for Control Environment, Risk Assessment, Control Activities, Information and Communication, and Monitoring. So let's break each one down.
We're actually going to start with the E in our little mnemonic, which stands for controlled environment. And this is, without a doubt, the foundation of the entire fortress. It's all about the tone at the top. Does management actually walk the walk when it comes to integrity and ethics? Is anyone ever held accountable? Because let me tell you, if the culture is rotten, no amount of policies or procedures is ever going to save you.
Next up, R for risk assessment. This is the forward-looking, strategic part of the whole framework. It's where you have a formal process to identify and analyze all those threats we saw earlier. It means you have to specifically think about fraud, and you have to constantly be scanning the horizon for changes. This is where you decide exactly how you're going to manage each and every risk.
And now we get to C for control activities. These are the boots-on-the-ground actions. These are the actual policies and procedures that mitigate the risks you've just identified. We're talking about things like requiring 2 signatures on a big check, or doing background checks on new hires, or just password protecting sensitive files.
This is the daily grind of internal control. Then we have I for information and communication. Think of this as the nervous system of the fortress. A great control system is totally useless if the right people don't know what's going on. This part makes sure that important, quality info flows up to the bosses, down to the frontline workers, and across all the different departments. It also covers communicating properly with outsiders, like investors.
And finally, M is for monitoring. Look, you can't just build this fortress and then walk away, right? The business is going to change, new risks are going to pop up. Monitoring is the process of checking up on the system. It's about doing regular checkups to see if the controls are still there, if they're still working, and if they're still effective. It's the feedback loop that keeps the whole fortress strong.
So we have this really powerful 5-part framework. But a blueprint is just a piece of paper, isn't it? It doesn't build itself. That brings us to a super important question. Who's actually responsible for all this? Well, as we're about to see, everyone plays a part. Internal control is, for sure, a team sport. It starts way up at the top, with the board of directors providing oversight. Senior management, led by the CEO, has the ultimate ownership and sets that all-important tone at the top. Internal auditors are like the independent inspectors, checking on the system's health. And this part is key. Every single other person in the company has a responsibility to do their part, to follow the controls every day, making that fortress strong from the ground up.
All of this work, the framework, the culture, the daily actions, it all leads to one big moment of truth. That's when the independent external auditors show up to pass judgment. And that brings us to our final section, the auditor's final verdict.
And this is the phrase that strikes fear into the heart of any executive: material weakness. So, what does that actually mean? Let's cut through the jargon. It's basically a flaw in your system so significant that there's a real chance a major error in the company's financial reports could just slip right through, totally undetected. And here's the kicker. If an auditor finds even one of these, the entire system, the whole fortress, is considered ineffective.
And finding a material weakness leads to some really bad outcomes. An adverse opinion is the worst direct result. It means the auditor found a material weakness, and it's flat out stating that the company's financials are not presented fairly. A disclaimer of opinion, though, is arguably just as bad. It means the auditor couldn't even get enough information to have an opinion, which is just a massive red flag for anyone looking to invest.
And that brings us to our final thought for today. Let's say a company does everything right. They navigate all of this perfectly and get a clean audit report. Does that mean they're invincible, totally safe from risk? Of course not. Remember that first definition we looked at? A system of internal control provides reasonable assurance, not absolute assurance. The fortress might be strong, but the world is always changing, and its defenders can never, ever afford to fall asleep.